So, Jody and John, what does EcoLogix mean by sustainability?
What I think we mean by sustainability is, does an organization have viable capabilities and capacities to be able to grow, sustain themselves as a business? And of course, that does mean things that are important to what their footprint is, how they're engaging in the natural environment, and what their inputs and outputs are in terms of the impacts that they have. That's actually only part of what we look at with an organization. So it seems to me that we're looking at it from a standpoint of the people who are involved, how they are, how they're organized, what their decision-making criteria are, how they interact with each other, what their communication patterns are, their organizational structure, and how all of that relates to them in the marketplace, their suppliers, their customers, their influencers in the marketplace, in the bigger system. So they're a system, they're a subsystem of a larger system, and we're really engaged in helping them thrive in that as a subsystem, as part of an ecosystem in the business world. John, what would you say?
I loved all that you said, and the movement that's been taking place, and I think it's really been through the decade of the 80s to now, is more or less looking at the exterior implications for sustainability. And we've learned how to do that better and better and better, and it's still going on. The thing that I'm really quite joyful about is that we're now beginning to include the interior of the individuals. And so how does the individual, and Pepe, you can speak to this really well, how does the interior of the individual become sustainable? Or how does the whole individual become sustainable? And then that shows up in all that frame that you just set about what happens in the business, what happens in the organization, what happens in the community. How is that a whole in terms of what we decide to do day to day inside the business? And it's an evolving thing. We don't have all the answers yet. You know, I don't think we will ever have a recipe for what is sustainable. I think we're continually pulling up this wisdom that's ever evolving, and then it's up to us self-responsibly to apply that. And Pepe, I'd love for you to speak to how, and you make comments about the sales. So say more about that.
Sure. I have viewed sustainability also from a very personal point of view. And how do we as individuals become sustainable? Because we are like little cells in a great organism. And if the cells are not sustainable themselves, well, the organism cannot be sustainable. Specifically, I've been studying nutrition for a few years, and I feel that it is the simplest, quickest, and least expensive way to accomplish personal sustainability. It is what we eat, what we think, that will sustain us.
So if we take that concept, that experience that you had, and apply it to an organization, what we're talking about often means when we step in and start working with an organization to move them towards organizational sustainability, there's going to be a period of disruption, of uncomfortableness, of doing new things or new ways of doing things that are uncomfortable, clunky, feel really odd. And in the process, there's going to be some discharge and some confusion and some disruption. And staying with it means over time that new patterns of interaction develop, new ways of looking at problems, not so much as problems as opportunities, ways of feeling levels of confidence in each other in the organization that says, oh, I can bring what's going on for me to this other person, and we can work out what needs to be dealt with in order to find our way where we're trying to go. And those resilient capacities are essential to organizational sustainability. And that will lead to awakening in how we can do things more effectively. What would be a more efficient way to accomplish what we're trying to accomplish? How are the materials that we're using being used wisely, being used with an awareness of both where they're coming from and where they go and what happens after we've touched it as well. So, we're really taking that definition of sustainability and expanding it beyond what it means in the general public into something that is really focused on the system of the organization and how that fits in the larger system of the business market.
And there's some fascinating research, and we've talked about this before, about subtle energies and the way subtle energies moves through every cell in our bodies, and then the way that affects the collective, the community, whatever community we're serving. And the wisdom, if we're able to clean up the toxins inside the cells of the body and the toxins inside the assumptions of the business, what happens is there's a wisdom that emerges that we've never really experienced before, and there's new perspectives that we can take. There's a new kind of language that emerges about the way in which we begin to then evaluate our options, make decisions, create all those kinds of whole system related interfaces that needs to go on within the business processes between the suppliers and the producers and the customers, and the language we use in those dialogues, and it's complex work. But it's a far superior way of working towards having a sustainable community together, and we're doing that in business.